For centuries, Zen masters have shared simple yet profound teachings about the peace that comes when we stop chasing. These aren't complicated philosophies or hard-to-understand concepts. They're simple truths that speak to the heart, truths that can help us find stillness in a world that often feels like it's always moving, always demanding more. Before we begin, take a moment to relax. Wherever you are, however you're feeling, allow your breath to slow down naturally. There's nothing you need to figure out or do perfectly. Just let these stories wash over you, gently and freely. Each one offers a doorway to a kind of peace that isn't found in striving but in letting go. The wisdom of Zen teaches us that peace isn't something we must chase or search for. It's already here, in the present moment, in this very breath. You don't have to go anywhere to find it. Relax. Take a slow, deep breath and allow yourself to let go of any thoughts of needing to achieve, needing to chase. Let's begin our journey together. Zen Master Tao sat quietly by the river, his eyes fixed on the water as it flowed gently toward the horizon. The air was calm, and the world seemed to move in perfect harmony with the rhythm of the river. There was no rushing, no hurry, just the peaceful, unhurried flow of life. Tao, sitting still, absorbed the serenity of the moment. Not far from him, a man in a small boat was rowing furiously against the current. His face was red with effort, and sweat dripped from his brow. His arms moved frantically, pushing the oars into the water. Yet the boat hardly seemed to move forward. With every stroke, the current pushed back, making the man's struggle feel like a battle he couldn't win. His eyes were fixed on the distant shore, and he seemed determined to reach it, no matter the cost. Master Tao observed the man's struggle for a while. He could see the frustration on the man's face, the exhaustion in his movements. Tao, who had lived many years in stillness and simplicity, understood the futility of the man's actions. The river was not an enemy to be defeated. It was simply flowing, as it always did. Tao remained quiet, watching, knowing that soon the man would begin to notice what he could not yet see. After some time, Tao stood up from his spot and approached the man, his steps quiet and measured. The man, caught up in his efforts, did not notice the master's approach until Tao spoke. "Why do you chase the current?" Tao asked softly, his voice calm and gentle. The man stopped rowing for a moment and looked at Tao, confused by the question. "What do you mean, master?" he replied, his voice strained from the effort. "I must reach the shore. The current is pushing me back, and I must fight it to get where I need to go." Tao smiled slightly, his eyes filled with understanding. "But why do you fight the current?" he asked again. "Why not let it carry you, as it carries everything else in its path? The river does not fight against itself. It moves with ease, and you, too, can move with it." The man's brow furrowed, his confusion growing. "But if I don't fight it, I'll never reach the shore," he said, still gripping the oars tightly, unwilling to let go of his struggle. "I have to try harder. I have to make it happen." Tao's gaze softened, and he knelt down beside the man, his voice steady and peaceful. "The moment you stop fighting the current," he said gently, "you will find yourself on the shore without struggle." The man looked at Tao, his mind racing, trying to make sense of the words. "But if I stop, I'll be carried away. I'll never get to where I need to go," he said, still clinging to the idea that effort was the only way to reach his goal. Tao simply smiled, his voice calm as he spoke once more. "The current does not wish to carry you away," he said. "It is not your enemy. It is simply the way of the river. The moment you stop fighting it, you will be carried gently to where you need to be. The shore is already there, waiting for you. You do not need to force it." The man's hands trembled slightly on the oars as he looked at the river and then back at Tao. His mind was still clouded with doubt, but something in Tao's presence began to settle the turbulence within him. Slowly, he loosened his grip on the oars, his arms aching from the constant struggle. He allowed the boat to drift, carried by the current. For a moment, the man felt a shift inside himself, a quiet release. The current, once an enemy to be conquered, now felt like a gentle force that could be trusted. He watched as the boat slowly moved, inching its way toward the distant shore, no longer fighting, no longer struggling. Tao, watching from the riverbank, said nothing more. He simply stood, allowing the man to experience the wisdom of the moment for himself. The man sat still in the boat, feeling the gentle pull of the current. For the first time, he realized that the river was not something to fight, but something to embrace. The shore, once distant and unreachable, now felt much closer, as though it had always been there, waiting patiently for him to stop fighting against the flow. As the boat continued to drift with the current, the man felt a sense of calm wash over him. The tension in his body began to melt away, and he realized that the struggle had been in his mind, not in the river. The shore would come, just as the river would continue to flow, whether he fought against it or not. Eventually, the boat reached the shore, and the man stepped out, his heart light and filled with a newfound understanding. He turned to Tao, who was still standing by the riverbank, watching with a serene expression. "Master," the man said, his voice filled with gratitude, "I understand now. I have been fighting against something that was never my enemy. I see that the current was not trying to keep me away from the shore. It was only when I stopped struggling that I was able to reach it." Tao nodded, his smile warm and kind. "The river flows, and it always will," he said. "When you stop fighting, when you stop struggling against what is, you will find that everything falls into place. The shore is never far away. It is always there, waiting for you. It is only our resistance that keeps us from reaching it." The man bowed deeply, his heart full of gratitude for the wisdom he had received. He had been chasing the current for so long, trying to control something that was beyond his control. Now, he understood that peace comes not from force, but from surrendering to the flow of life. The river, like life itself, would carry him to where he needed to be, but only when he stopped trying to fight against it. As he walked away from the river, the man felt lighter, freer. The lesson he had learned that day would stay with him forever. The more he struggled, the more distant the shore had seemed. But when he let go, when he stopped chasing, he had found that life flowed effortlessly toward him. From that day forward, the man no longer fought against the current of life. He learned to trust in the flow, to let go of his need for control, and to move with the rhythm of the world around him. The shore was never far, it had always been there, and the moment he stopped struggling, he had arrived. Zen student Sato had spent many years seeking enlightenment, moving from one teacher to the next, hoping that each would hold the key to the peace he longed for. He had studied with some of the most respected masters in the land, each offering their own guidance, each teaching him something new, yet still, a sense of deep dissatisfaction remained within him. No matter how much he learned, no matter how hard he tried to follow the path they laid out before him, something seemed to elude him. Peace, he thought, should feel different, should feel closer, but it always seemed just out of reach. Sato's mind was restless, constantly turning over questions, doubts, and desires. He would lie awake at night, replaying everything he had been taught, searching for something more, something that would make all the pieces fall into place. He knew many of the teachings by heart, yet his heart felt heavy. His quest for peace had become a burden, and his search felt endless. One day, after a long and frustrating period of study, Sato came upon a master known as Ryoku. Master Ryoku was not famous like some of the other teachers Sato had studied under. He was a quiet, humble man, known for his deep understanding of life's simple truths. Sato had heard of him, and something about the rumors of this master's calm presence called to him. Perhaps, he thought, Ryoku could finally give him the peace he so desperately sought. With a heart full of hope and determination, Sato traveled to Master Ryoku's small, peaceful monastery located by a waterfall. The sound of rushing water filled the air as Sato approached, and he felt something stir inside him, a sense of anticipation mixed with a bit of nervousness. He had been searching for so long, and though he did not know what to expect, he hoped this encounter might finally offer the answers he had been seeking. Ryoku was waiting for him by the waterfall, standing still as the water cascaded down the rocks in front of him. The sight was beautiful, peaceful, and powerful, as though the waterfall had been flowing for centuries without ever tiring. Ryoku looked at Sato and smiled, his eyes calm and kind, as if he had already known the questions that troubled the young student's mind. Sato approached, bowed, and then spoke, his voice full of yearning. "Master Ryoku, I have been chasing enlightenment for many years. I have studied under many great teachers, yet peace remains just beyond my grasp. I am still restless. Please, tell me, how can I find peace?" Ryoku did not respond immediately. He stood silently for a moment, his gaze fixed on the waterfall. Then he gently pointed to the water flowing before them. "Look at the waterfall," he said. Sato, though a bit confused, turned his attention to the water. He watched as the water fell from the heights above, flowing effortlessly over the rocks and splashing into the pool below. The water seemed to move naturally, never stopping, never hesitating, just flowing, as if it was doing exactly what it was meant to do. The sound of the rushing water filled the air, deep and soothing, yet it was not chaotic. It was perfectly aligned with its purpose, moving forward without force, without resistance. "The water flows effortlessly," Ryoku continued, his voice soft but clear. "Yet, it reaches its destination. It does not struggle. It does not fight against the rocks, nor does it try to rush to its destination. It simply flows, and in doing so, it reaches the place where it is meant to be." Sato looked at the waterfall, the steady stream of water flowing downward, and then turned his gaze back to Ryoku, still unsure what this had to do with his own quest for peace. "But Master, the water is moving. It has a direction. It is going somewhere. How can that be effortless?" Ryoku smiled, a knowing smile. "Yes, the water moves, but it does not chase its destination. It does not try to force its way. It does not seek the pool below, nor does it wish to hurry. It simply flows, and in its flowing, it reaches the destination. The water does not chase, it lets itself be carried." Sato felt something stir inside him, a feeling of recognition, but it was still unclear. "So, you are saying that I should stop chasing enlightenment?" Ryoku nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "Yes, Sato, you have been chasing peace, chasing enlightenment, but in chasing it, you are not allowing it to come to you. Like the waterfall, you must stop trying to force things. Stop struggling against the flow of life, and it will take you exactly where you need to go. The moment you stop chasing, you will find peace waiting for you." Sato's mind raced as he tried to understand this new idea. He had spent so many years pushing forward, trying to reach a goal, trying to make enlightenment his own. He had worked so hard, so desperately, that it had become a source of frustration. But now, Ryoku's words made sense in a way that he couldn't explain. He realized that in his effort to achieve peace, he had only created more unrest. Perhaps peace was not something to be chased. Perhaps it was something to be allowed. Ryoku spoke again, his voice gentle and steady. "Do not mistake effort for struggle. The water flows with effort, but it is not a struggle. The key is to stop fighting, stop struggling against what is, and you will find that you are already where you need to be." Sato sat down by the edge of the waterfall, his heart racing. He had spent so much of his life chasing, striving, and fighting. He thought he needed to push harder to find peace, but now he saw that his very struggle was keeping it at a distance. The more he chased, the more elusive it became. He looked at the water again, its calm flow, the way it moved effortlessly over the rocks, never once pausing to question its direction. It simply was. It simply flowed, and in that flow it found its way. Sato felt a deep shift within him. The tension that had filled his body for years began to loosen. He closed his eyes and took a slow, deep breath. The world around him felt quieter now, softer. He could feel the cool air against his skin, the steady rhythm of the water, the gentle hum of life continuing without pause, without effort. He realized that peace, like the water, was already flowing through his life. He had been too busy chasing it to see that it had always been there, waiting for him to stop running after it. Master Ryoku, watching the change in Sato, said softly, "When you stop chasing, you will find that everything you seek is already here. You don't have to force it. You don't have to strive. Just flow." Sato looked up at his master, a sense of clarity settling in his chest. "But master, how do I stop chasing? How do I stop myself from constantly seeking?" Ryoku smiled. "The key is in the present moment. The water doesn't rush to the future. It is here in this moment, and it is at peace. You must do the same. Stop thinking of what you must do next, and simply be where you are. Allow yourself to flow with life, without trying to control it." Sato felt a wave of peace wash over him as he sat by the waterfall, the sound of the water echoing in his mind. For the first time in years, he felt as if he could simply breathe, as if the weight of his search had lifted. He did not need to chase, he did not need to force. Everything would come in its own time, and he would be carried along just as the water flowed. Master Ryoku's voice was calm as he added one final thought. "The moment you stop chasing, you will find yourself exactly where you need to be. Peace is not something you must find, it is already within you, waiting to be recognized. Like the water, when you stop fighting against life, you will find that it is carrying you gently toward your destination." Sato sat in silence, absorbing the wisdom of his master's words. He could feel the truth of them in every part of his being. He had spent so much time trying to control his journey, trying to make peace happen, but now he understood that peace was not something to be chased. It was something to be allowed, something that flowed naturally when he stopped fighting against it. As he stood up to leave the waterfall, he felt lighter, as though a great burden had been lifted. He did not need to chase anymore. He simply needed to let go and allow the current of life to carry him forward. In the flow of life, he would find his peace. And so, Sato left Master Ryoku's monastery, his heart at ease. He had learned the most important lesson of all, that peace comes when we stop chasing and allow ourselves to flow with life, just as the water flows effortlessly toward its destination. Jun was a young monk, full of energy and determination. He had joined the monastery at an early age, eager to find the path to enlightenment. Every day, he followed the teachings of his masters with great diligence. He read the sacred texts, performed his meditation practices, and sought out wisdom from the monks around him. But despite all his efforts, Jun felt unsatisfied. The peace and clarity that he longed for always seemed just beyond his reach. The more he studied, the more restless he became. He wanted to attain enlightenment quickly, to experience the deep peace that came with it, and he believed that the faster he could get there, the better his life would be. He thought that if he worked hard enough, put in enough effort, he would be rewarded. He wanted to know the secret, to be shown the shortcut to enlightenment. Each day, his desire grew stronger, and so did his frustration. He could feel his impatience growing, his thoughts becoming more scattered as he struggled with this longing to arrive. One evening, Jun went to Master Quan, an old and wise monk, known for his quiet wisdom and deep understanding of Zen. Master Kuan was sitting in the garden, tending to the flowers and plants with great care. Jun approached him and bowed, as he had been taught, before speaking with a tone filled with eagerness and impatience. "Master Kuan," Jun said, his voice filled with urgency, "how can I become enlightened? I have followed the practices, I have studied, I have meditated, but I still feel restless. What is the quickest way to enlightenment?" Master Kuan looked up from his work with a calm, steady gaze. He didn't respond immediately, but instead, he smiled gently and nodded toward the trees nearby, where a monkey was chasing its own tail. The monkey, moving in circles, seemed determined, yet no matter how hard it tried, it could not catch the tail. It spun around and around, always chasing, but never quite reaching the prize. "Jun," Master Kuan said softly, "have you ever watched a monkey chase its tail?" Jun paused and turned his gaze toward the monkey. He watched as the little creature continued its frantic spinning, moving faster and faster in its pursuit, but still unable to catch what it sought. The monkey's movements were wild and full of energy, but in the end, it was always just out of reach of the very thing it was chasing. "Yes, Master," Jun replied, nodding. "I've seen it many times. It never catches its tail." Master Kuan smiled again, his expression calm and full of understanding. "The monkey never catches its tail, Jun, but when it stops chasing, the tail is there, waiting. Do you see?" Jun furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of what Master Kuan was saying. He had always been taught that effort and striving were essential to reaching enlightenment. His desire to attain it quickly felt so strong, he couldn't understand how stopping could lead to finding what he sought. "Master," Jun said, still not fully grasping the point, "but if the monkey stops chasing, how does it get its tail? If it wants the tail, shouldn't it keep trying? Shouldn't it put in more effort?" Master Kuan gently shook his head. "You see, Jun, the monkey's tail is always there. It is never out of reach, but as long as the monkey is chasing, it cannot see that the tail is right behind it. It is only when the monkey stops chasing that it finds what it was looking for all along. The effort, the frantic chasing, only keeps it from what is already present." Jun's mind began to settle as he heard Master Kuan's words, but he still didn't understand fully. He had been taught to strive, to work hard, to put in all his energy into the pursuit of enlightenment. To stop striving felt wrong to him, like giving up. How could that possibly be the answer? Master Kuan saw the confusion in Jun's eyes and spoke again, his voice full of quiet wisdom. "You are like the monkey, Jun. You are chasing enlightenment, believing that it is something distant, something you must catch. But enlightenment, like the tail, is already with you. It is not something to chase or force. It is found in the moment when you stop chasing and simply allow it to be. You don't need to chase what is already here." Jun sat quietly, absorbing the words of his master. He had been running after something that he thought was far away, something he had to catch. But Master Kuan's words were beginning to open something within him, a deeper understanding. It was as though the moment he stopped chasing, he might finally be able to see what he had been looking for all along. Master Kuan continued, "Desire can be a strong force, Jun. It can drive you to achieve many things, but it can also blind you to the peace that is already available. When you stop chasing, you create space for what is naturally there to reveal itself." Jun took a deep breath, his mind calming as he thought about the monkey and the tail. He realized that, in his own life, he had been chasing the idea of enlightenment, trying to force it into his life through effort and will, but he had never stopped to simply let it be, to simply allow it to unfold naturally. His mind had been clouded by desire, by the need to achieve, and in that struggle, he had missed the point entirely. He looked at Master Kuan, who was now back to tending the flowers, his movements slow and purposeful, each one flowing with ease. Jun sat quietly beside him, his mind settling into a deeper state of peace. He felt a shift within him, a quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, enlightenment was not something he had to chase. Perhaps it was always there, in the stillness of the present moment, waiting for him to stop running after it. Master Quan, sensing the change in Jun, turned to him once more. "Jun," he said gently, "the moment you stop chasing, you will find that everything you seek is already with you. Stop running, stop striving, and allow yourself to simply be present. When you stop chasing, you will find what you seek without effort." Jun nodded slowly, understanding now in a way he hadn't before. The chase, the striving, the constant pushing forward, it had all been a distraction. He had been caught in the belief that enlightenment was a distant goal to be attained, when in reality, it was already present, in each moment, waiting to be discovered when he stopped running after it. That night, for the first time in many weeks, Jun slept peacefully. He awoke the next morning with a quiet mind, no longer burdened by the need to attain anything. He walked outside to the garden, where Master Quan was already working. The morning air was fresh and still, and Jun felt a sense of calm he had never known before. Master Quan was pulling weeds from the garden, his movements slow and deliberate, his attention fully on the task at hand. Jun joined him, silently, and began to help. As they worked together, Jun realized that each movement, each breath, each moment was enough. He didn't need to strive for anything more. The peace he had been seeking was already within him, and it was only through stopping the chase that he could begin to feel it. The days passed, and Jun continued his work at the monastery. He practiced meditation with more ease, no longer feeling the need to force himself into a state of stillness. He simply sat, aware of the present moment, and in that awareness, he found peace. The desire to attain enlightenment quickly faded, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude for the simplicity of life. Years later, when people asked Jun about his path to enlightenment, he would smile and share the story of Master Quan and the monkey chasing its tail. "I spent many years chasing enlightenment," he would say. "But it was only when I stopped chasing that I found it. I learned that peace is not something to be attained. It is already here, waiting for us to stop running after it." And so, Jun's journey was no longer a struggle, but a gentle unfolding, like the natural flow of the water in a stream. He had learned that the more we chase something, the farther it moves away from us. But when we stop and allow ourselves to be, everything we seek is already there, waiting for us to notice. In this lesson, Jun learned that desire can drive us, but it can also blind us to what is already present. Peace and enlightenment are not distant goals. They are found in the stillness of the present moment, in the simple act of stopping, letting go, and allowing life to flow as it is. When we stop chasing, we find that everything we seek is already with us. Jen was an elder monk who had spent many years in meditation and contemplation. His life was simple, focused on the present moment, and free from the distractions that often entangle others. Jen's mind was like a calm lake, unruffled by the winds of desire, worry, or regret. He had learned over time that peace did not come from grasping for something in the future, nor from trying to hold on to something from the past. Peace, he had discovered, came from allowing things to be as they are, in their own time, without trying to control them. One autumn morning, Jen sat quietly beneath a large tree, deep in meditation. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft golden light through the branches. The air was crisp, and the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves added a gentle rhythm to the quiet of the morning. Jen was perfectly still, breathing in and out, deeply, slowly, allowing the natural world to surround him without effort. As he sat, his companion Kyo was nearby, also enjoying the peace of the morning. Kyo was a younger monk, full of energy and curiosity. He was still learning to calm his restless mind, still trying to find the inner peace that Jen had discovered so many years ago. Kyo admired Jen deeply, and though he had been taught the same lessons, it was clear to him that Jen had reached a place of deep understanding that he himself had yet to attain. Suddenly, a leaf detached itself from one of the branches of the tree above them and began to fall toward the ground. The leaf fluttered gently in the air, twisting and turning with the wind, descending gracefully to the earth. It was a beautiful sight, and Jen watched it with a serene expression, completely at ease with its natural movement. There was no rush, no tension in the leaf's fall, just the quiet, effortless descent of something that was simply following its course. But Kyo, eager and restless as always, noticed the leaf as well. He saw it falling and, in a moment of excitement, quickly reached out to catch it. His hands moved swiftly, but despite his effort, the leaf continued to drift downward, eluding his grasp. Kyo lunged again, trying desperately to catch it before it touched the ground, but the leaf continued to float, just out of reach. His movements grew more frantic as he tried to predict the leaf's path, to catch it in mid-air before it could land. Jen, still seated in his meditation, watched this unfold with a soft chuckle. There was no need for words. The lesson was unfolding naturally before him. Kyo's struggle to catch the leaf mirrored the way many people lived their lives, always reaching, always striving, always chasing after something just beyond their grasp. Jen, in his stillness, understood that there was no need to chase. Everything would come in its own time. Finally, after several more attempts, Kyo paused, his hands outstretched in the air, watching the leaf as it made its way down to the ground. It landed softly on the earth, without effort, without struggle. Kyo's chest rose and fell with the quick breaths of his exertion, but he could see now, in the leaf's gentle landing, a kind of truth. Jen looked at Kyo with kind eyes and said softly, "The leaf falls on its own, without effort. When you stop chasing things, they will come to you naturally." Kyo stood still for a moment, processing what Jen had said. He glanced at the leaf now resting peacefully on the ground, its journey complete. It had come down effortlessly, not in haste, but in its own time, as it was meant to. And yet, Kyo had tried so hard to catch it, to control its path, believing that his effort would make it his. He had not understood, until now, that the leaf would have come to him without his chasing. Zen continued, his voice calm and steady. "You see, Kyo, when you chase something, you make it harder to obtain. You create tension, you create struggle, but when you stop chasing, things will naturally come to you. They will find their way to you, in their own time, without effort." Kyo looked down at the leaf and then back at Jen, a deep sense of understanding beginning to take root in his heart. He realized that the leaf was a perfect example of how life works. The more he tried to control the world around him, the more it seemed to slip away. The more he grasped, the more elusive everything became. But in the stillness, in the letting go, things flowed naturally. Jen could see the shift in Kyo's awareness. The young monk's eyes had softened, and his posture had relaxed. He had seen how his frantic efforts had made the situation more difficult, and he understood now that there was a gentler way to live, a way that did not require force or struggle. "The leaf didn't need to be caught," Jen said gently. "It was already on its way. It had its own path to follow, its own time to fall. The same is true for everything in life. When we stop trying to control the outcome, when we let go of our desire to make things happen, we allow life to unfold naturally. We allow things to come to us without struggle." Kyo sat down beside Jen, feeling the weight of his master's words sink into his heart. He had spent so much of his life chasing after things, chasing recognition, chasing success, chasing peace, but now he saw that the more he chased, the farther away those things seemed. It was only in letting go, in stopping the chase, that he could truly find what he was looking for. For the rest of the morning, Kyo and Jen sat in quiet meditation, the sounds of the world around them blending with the stillness in their hearts. The breeze continued to rustle through the leaves, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the world moved as it always did, without effort, without hurry. As Kyo sat there, he realized something profound. Peace could not be chased. It was not a goal to be reached, not a prize to be obtained. Peace was a state of being, a state that could only be found in the present moment, when he stopped trying to control it, when he stopped reaching for it. Peace, like the leaf, came naturally when he allowed it to. The next day, as Kyo went about his tasks, he found himself noticing the subtle ways in which he had been chasing things. He noticed how often he reached for things, trying to force outcomes, trying to make things happen according to his own will. He realized that in his efforts to control, he had created tension in his life. But now, with the wisdom of the leaf in his heart, Kyo decided to stop chasing. He would let go and allow things to come to him naturally. Over time, Kyo's life began to change. He found that when he stopped chasing success, success came to him in unexpected ways. When he stopped chasing approval, he found that others began to respect him for who he truly was. And most importantly, when he stopped chasing peace, he found it within himself, resting in the stillness of his heart. One evening, as the sun set and the day came to a close, Kyo found himself sitting in the same spot where the leaf had fallen so many days before. He smiled to himself, remembering the lesson Jen had taught him. He had stopped chasing, and in doing so, he had found everything he had been looking for. Jen came and sat beside him, as he always did, and the two monks sat in quiet togetherness, watching the day turn into night. The world continued to move around them, but for the first time, Kyo felt at peace with it all. He did not need to chase the world anymore. He only needed to be present with it. As they sat, Jen spoke once more, his voice as calm as the night air. Life will always come to you, Kyo, when you stop chasing. Everything you need is already here, already within you. You need only stop running after it and allow it to come in its own time. Kyo nodded, his heart full of gratitude. He had learned the greatest lesson of all, the lesson that the more we chase, the more we struggle. But when we stop, when we let go of our need to control, we find that everything comes to us, effortlessly, naturally, just as it is meant to. And in that moment, as Kyo sat beside Jen, he understood that life, like the falling leaf, would always find its way to him. All he needed to do was let it fall, without trying to catch it, and trust that it would land exactly where it was meant to. From that day forward, Kyo's life was lighter. He moved through each moment with a calm heart, free from the need to chase or control. And in doing so, he found that everything he sought, peace, happiness, and fulfillment, was already with him, waiting for him to stop running after it. The falling leaf had shown him the way. Haru was a farmer who worked from dawn until dusk, day after day, on the land that had been passed down through his family for generations. He was a man of simple needs but great determination. He believed that the harder he worked, the more he would receive in return. His hands were calloused from years of toil, his back aching from long hours spent bent over his fields. He never stopped, never took a break, always pushing himself, always striving to make the land yield more. Every morning, Haru would rise before the sun, gather his tools, and head to the fields. He would toil from the first light of day until the last rays of the sun faded into the horizon. He plowed the soil, planted the seeds, watered the crops, and tended to them with the same unyielding effort. He believed that his work was the only way to ensure a good harvest. In his mind, the more effort he put into his labor, the greater the reward would be. But despite his tireless work, Haru's life was always a struggle. His crops were not always as plentiful as he had hoped, and the seasons often seemed to turn against him. There were times when the rains would not come, or the harvest would be smaller than expected. Yet, Haru never rested. He believed that the key to success was more labor, more effort. Every day, he pushed himself harder, believing that if he worked just a little longer, the harvest would come and his life would improve. One day, as Haru was working in the field, drenched in sweat, pulling weeds from around his crops, he noticed a Zen master passing by. The master was an older man, dressed in simple robes, walking slowly along the path that ran alongside Haru's fields. The Zen master stopped for a moment and watched Haru, his eyes observing the man's movements with quiet attention. Haru, noticing the master, wiped the sweat from his brow and greeted him. "Good day, master," Haru said, pausing for a moment in his work. The Zen master nodded politely, then observed Haru's labor. "You are chasing the harvest with your sweat," he said, his voice calm and measured. "But you cannot force the seasons. When you let go of your expectations, the harvest will come when it is ready." Haru looked up at the master, his face confused. "I do not understand, master," Haru replied. "I work hard every day, tending to my fields. I put in all my effort because I believe that the harvest depends on my toil. If I do not work hard, I will have nothing." The Zen master smiled gently and gestured toward the fields. "You are right to tend to your crops, but you cannot force them to grow faster than they are ready to. You cannot make the rain fall by your will, nor can you make the sun shine longer. The seasons will turn as they will, and the crops will grow when the time is right." Haru stood silently for a moment, still not fully understanding. He had always believed that if he worked hard enough, if he labored enough, he could control the outcome. He had never considered that perhaps there was another way. The master's words lingered in his mind, but Haru wasn't sure how to apply them to his life. The Zen master, seeing the farmer's confusion, continued, "You see, Haru, the earth gives freely when the time is right, but it does not respond to force. It responds to patience. You cannot hurry the seasons, nor can you control them. But if you trust in the natural rhythm of things, the harvest will come, just as it always does." Haru thought about the master's words for a moment, but still, the idea of trusting the natural rhythm felt foreign to him. He had always believed in hard work, in striving, in doing everything he could to shape his destiny. To trust in nature's timing felt like giving up control. "You say to trust the rhythm of nature," Haru said slowly, "but how can I just wait for things to happen? If I do not work, I will not have enough. How can I trust in something I cannot see or control?" The Zen master's eyes softened. "Trust is not about passivity, Haru. It is about understanding the balance between effort and acceptance. You must work, yes, but without the attachment to the outcome. You cannot force the result. You must allow the harvest to come in its own time, without expectation. The land does not ask for more effort than it needs, and neither should you." Haru stood still, listening to the master's words. The wind blew gently through the fields, the trees rustling softly. Haru looked at his crops and felt the weight of his labor. He had always believed that the more effort he put in, the more he would get in return. But the master's words planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Could it be that he had been working too hard, pushing too much, expecting more than was necessary? The Zen master continued, "When you let go of your expectations, when you stop forcing the outcome, you create space for peace and for ease. You will still work, still tend to your crops, but without the need to control everything. And in that space, the harvest will come, and you will be ready to receive it." Haru stood quietly for a while, the master's words sinking into his mind. It was a difficult idea for him to grasp, but he felt something stirring inside him, a sense of relief, as though a heavy burden was beginning to lift. He had been chasing the harvest, chasing the result, chasing the future, and in doing so, he had been exhausting himself, draining his energy with no guarantee of success. Perhaps the master was right. Perhaps it was time to let go. The Zen master gave Haru one last smile before continuing on his way, leaving the farmer to reflect on what he had heard. Haru watched him disappear down the path, and then he turned back to his fields. The work was still there, the weeds still needed to be pulled, and the crops still needed care. But something had changed in Haru's heart. He realized that, while he still needed to work, he did not need to force the result. He could trust in the natural course of things. Over the next few days, Haru continued his work in the fields, but he did so with a lighter heart. He no longer focused solely on the outcome, the harvest that was still months away. Instead, he began to find peace in the work itself. He still tended to the crops, watered the plants, and cleared the weeds. But now he did so without the constant need to control or hurry. Each moment of work became its own reward, a simple act of care rather than a frantic attempt to reach the future. As the seasons passed, Haru began to notice changes in himself. He became less anxious about the harvest. The rains came when they were meant to, the sun shone when it was time, and the crops grew at their own pace. Haru could see the results of his work, but he no longer felt the intense pressure to control every detail. The harvest, when it came, was plentiful, but more importantly, it came without the same struggle that had once consumed him. One day, as Haru stood in his fields, watching the crops sway gently in the breeze, he realized that the master's teachings had worked. By letting go of his expectations, by trusting in the natural flow of life, he had found peace. The work was still there, but it was no longer a burden. It was a part of the rhythm of life, and he had learned to move with it. Years later, Haru would often reflect on that moment with the Zen master. He had learned that true abundance came not from the amount of effort one put into something, but from the ability to allow things to unfold as they are meant to. Through this lesson, Haru discovered a new way of living, one where peace came not from striving but from surrendering to the natural flow of life. Haru's life became richer, not because he worked harder, but because he learned to work with nature, to accept the seasons as they came, and to trust that the harvest would arrive when it was ready. And, in that trust, he found the greatest reward of all: peace. Monk Ryota was young and full of energy. His desire to reach nirvana burned with a fierce intensity. Every moment of his life was dedicated to the pursuit of enlightenment. He studied the scriptures, practiced his meditation, and followed every rule and instruction with the belief that through sheer effort he would one day reach his goal. He imagined nirvana as a distant place, something he could attain by working hard, as enough by pushing himself to his limits. Yet, despite his constant striving, Ryota felt a sense of dissatisfaction. He could not seem to quiet his mind completely, nor could he find the peace he so desperately sought. The more he focused on the goal, the more elusive it became. Every moment felt like a race towards something he could not quite reach. There was no peace, no stillness, only a constant drive for the next achievement, the next step, the next moment. One morning, after a particularly long and exhausting meditation session, Ryota went for a walk in the temple's garden to clear his mind. He was still restless, his mind full of thoughts and desires for enlightenment, but he hoped the fresh air and quiet surroundings would help him find some calm. As he walked through the garden, his eyes were drawn to Master Daichi, an older monk who had lived in the temple for many years. Daichi was strolling slowly through the garden, his hands folded in front of him, his steps deliberate and measured. He seemed to be enjoying the simple act of walking, fully present in each step, without hurry or concern. The sun shone gently on his face, and the air was calm, but Ryota could not help but notice how slowly Daichi moved, almost as if there was no rush at all. Ryota, unable to hold back his curiosity, approached the older monk. "Master," he asked, "why do you move so slowly? You must know that time is precious, and yet you walk as if you have all the time in the world. Shouldn't we be rushing toward enlightenment? Shouldn't we be working faster, meditating more, striving harder to reach nirvana?" Daichi smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. He looked at Ryota for a long moment before responding. "I am not rushing toward nirvana, my young friend," Daichi said slowly. "I am already here, in this moment. The moment you stop rushing, you'll discover that everything you seek is already here." Ryota was taken aback by the simplicity of Daichi's words. He had always thought that enlightenment was something distant, something to be reached by hard work and dedication. He had always believed that he had to move faster, push harder, achieve more in order to reach nirvana. But Daichi's words stirred something in his heart, something he couldn't quite explain. "Master, I don't understand," Ryota said, his voice filled with confusion. "How can we already be in nirvana? How can we be already where we need to be? Isn't enlightenment something we must reach, something we must strive for?" Daichi's smile deepened, and he nodded. "Yes, you must strive," he said. "But your striving should not be filled with impatience or hurry. Nirvana is not a place to reach. It is a state of being. It is not something distant, something you must work toward. It is here, in this moment, right now. The moment you stop rushing, you will see that everything you need is already within you." Ryota's mind raced as he tried to understand. He had spent so many years chasing after something he believed was far off in the future. He had always believed that enlightenment would come if he worked hard enough, meditated enough, and followed the path precisely. But Daichi's words made him question everything. Could it be that the answer was not in striving, not in rushing, but in simply being? Master Daichi continued, "You see, Ryota, when you rush towards something, you create tension. You create a sense of lack, as if something is missing. But in truth, everything is already here. The moment you stop rushing, you will find peace, because you will no longer be searching for something outside of yourself. You will simply be, and in that being, everything will unfold naturally." Ryota felt a shift within himself, a quiet moment of understanding. He had always felt that his striving was necessary, that his relentless desire for enlightenment was what would bring him peace. But now he saw that his constant rush towards something he thought was ahead of him was what kept him from the peace that was already within him. "Master," Ryota said, his voice soft, "how do I stop rushing? How do I let go of my need to strive?" Daichi smiled again and said, "You stop rushing by becoming present. Right now, this moment is all there is. When you are fully present, when you stop thinking about the past or the future, you will discover that everything you need is already here. You don't need to go anywhere or do anything to find peace. It is already with you in the present moment." Ryota felt a deep sense of relief wash over him as he listened to Daichi's words. For so long, he had believed that peace was something he had to chase, something he had to attain by working harder and faster. But now, he understood that peace was not something to be found in the future. It was right here, in the present moment, waiting for him to stop chasing it. For the rest of the day, Ryota tried to practice what Daichi had taught him. He focused on the present moment, on each breath, on each step, and slowly, the tension in his body began to ease. He no longer felt the urgency to reach nirvana. Instead, he allowed himself to simply be, to experience the world around him without the need to chase it. As he walked through the garden that evening, he noticed the colors of the flowers more vividly. He heard the sound of the birds in the trees and felt the soft breeze on his skin. There was no need to hurry, no need to push forward. Everything was already here, just as it was meant to be. In the following weeks, Ryota continued to practice being present. His meditation became more peaceful, his mind quieter, and his heart lighter. The more he let go of the need to strive, the more he felt a deep sense of peace growing within him. He still worked hard, still followed the teachings of the monastery, but now his efforts were no longer driven by the need to reach an unattainable goal. Instead, he worked from a place of acceptance, of being, knowing that everything would unfold in its own time. One evening, Ryota sat by the same garden where he had first spoken with Master Daichi. He looked up at the sky and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The stars were beginning to appear, and the moon cast a soft glow on the ground. Ryota closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the peace of the present moment fill him completely. He had stopped rushing, and in doing so, he had found the peace he had been seeking all along. Master Daichi appeared beside him, sitting down quietly in the grass. He looked at Ryota with a knowing smile. "How does it feel to be here, in this moment, without rushing?" he asked. Ryota opened his eyes and looked at his master. "It feels peaceful, Master," he said, his voice calm. "I understand now. Nirvana is not something I need to chase. It is already here, in this moment, in the stillness." Daichi nodded. "Yes, Ryota. The moment you stop rushing, the moment you stop chasing, you will find that everything you seek is already here, already within you. Peace is not something you must attain. It is something you must allow." From that moment on, Ryota no longer rushed toward nirvana. He still walked the path of meditation, study, and practice, but he did so with a heart that was already at peace. He understood that enlightenment was not a goal to be reached, but a way of being, and in that understanding, he found the peace that had eluded him for so long. Years later, when others asked Ryota how he had found such peace, he would smile and say, "I stopped rushing, I stopped chasing, and in that stillness, I discovered that everything I sought was already here." Takeshi was a traveler, one who had spent much of his life wandering in search of meaning. From a young age, he had felt an inner thirst, a longing he could not understand. The world was vast, filled with possibilities, yet he could not shake the feeling that something essential was missing. He had traveled far and wide, through cities and mountains, villages and forests, seeking wisdom from anyone he could find. He had met many people, learned many teachings, and heard countless stories, but none of them seemed to quench the thirst that burned inside him. One day, after a long journey across a barren land, Takeshi arrived at a Zen temple nestled in a quiet valley. The temple was serene and peaceful, its simplicity offering a stark contrast to the restless wanderings of his mind. Takeshi had heard of this temple, of the great wisdom that flowed from its walls, and he hoped that perhaps this place could hold the answers he had been seeking. He entered the temple, his steps slow and deliberate, as if the very act of stepping onto the grounds of the temple might bring him some relief. Inside, he was greeted by Master Haku, an elder monk known for his quiet wisdom and deep understanding of life's mysteries. Takeshi, his voice filled with eagerness, bowed deeply and asked, "Master Haku, I have traveled far in search of the secret to life. I have sought wisdom from many, but none have been able to quench the thirst that I feel inside me. Please, tell me the secret to life. What is the key to peace and understanding?" Master Haku looked at Takeshi for a long moment, his eyes calm and steady, as if he had already seen the answer to the traveler's question. Then, without speaking, he gestured toward a well near the edge of the temple's garden. The well was simple, made of stone, with clear water reflecting the sky above. Haku walked toward the well, and Takeshi, eager for some answer, followed him. "Drink from the well," Haku said quietly, "but do not grasp the water, only drink it as it is." Takeshi was puzzled by the monk's words, but did not question him. He knelt beside the well and cupped his hands, scooping up some of the cool water and bringing it to his lips. The water was refreshing, pure, and cold. It felt good as it slid down his throat, quenching his thirst. But as he set his hands down and stood up, he could not help but feel a lingering question. What did the master mean by not grasping the water? Hadn't he simply taken what was offered, drunk it, and felt his thirst quenched? He turned to Master Haku, still filled with curiosity. "Master," he asked, "I drank from the well, but how does this relate to my search for meaning? You told me to drink, but not to grasp the water. I don't understand." Master Haku smiled softly, his gaze filled with understanding. "Takeshi, you are like the thirsty traveler who keeps grasping for water, believing that in grasping you will find peace. But the moment you stop grasping, life will quench your thirst. The water is here, and it is always available, but you must stop trying to control it. Stop trying to hold on to it. You must drink it as it is, without trying to grasp it." Takeshi was silent for a moment, trying to understand the depth of what Master Haku was saying. He had spent his entire life grasping, reaching for something he could not define. He had thought that by searching harder, by seeking more answers, he would find peace. But now, as he stood by the well, he realized that perhaps his search had been misguided. Perhaps it was not the water that was the problem, but his attempt to control it, to possess it. Haku spoke again, his voice steady and clear. "The water in the well is like life. It flows freely, without effort. But you, Takeshi, are like a traveler who keeps reaching for it, grasping for it, thinking that you must control it to find peace. Life is not something you can control. It is not something you can grasp or hold on to. When you stop grasping, when you stop forcing, you will find that life will quench your thirst on its own." Takeshi felt a shift within himself, as if a veil had been lifted from his mind. He had been searching for peace in all the wrong places. He had thought that if he could only reach the right place, meet the right teacher, or learn the right philosophy, he would find what he was looking for. But now, he saw that the search itself had been the problem. His constant reaching, his constant grasping, had kept him from the peace that was already available to him. "I see now, Master," Takeshi said, his voice soft. "I have been searching for peace, but I have been searching in the wrong way. I have been grasping, trying to control everything. I thought that by seeking more, by striving more, I would find what I was looking for. But I see now that peace is not something I can control. It is already here, in this moment, waiting for me to stop grasping." Haku nodded, his expression serene. "Yes, Takeshi. Life flows like the water in the well. It is always present, always available, but we must stop trying to force it, stop trying to possess it. When you stop grasping, when you let go of your desire to control everything, you will find that life will come to you, and you will find peace." Takeshi stood still for a moment, letting the master's words sink in. He realized that his search for meaning had been like trying to grasp at the water in the well. The more he reached, the more it slipped away. But when he stopped grasping, when he allowed the water to flow as it would, he could drink deeply, and his thirst would be quenched. "Thank you, Master," Takeshi said, bowing deeply. "I understand now. I have been searching for something outside of myself, when what I was searching for was already here, within me. I will stop grasping, and I will let life flow." Master Haku smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "You have learned, Takeshi. Now go and live with ease. Do not grasp, but let life flow as it will. Peace is found in the letting go, in the acceptance of what is. When you stop grasping, you will find that everything you seek is already with you." Takeshi left the well with a light heart, his mind clearer than it had ever been. He had been a traveler for so long, searching for something he thought was far away. But now he understood that peace was not something to be found in a distant place or a distant time. Peace was already here, in this moment, in the simple act of letting go. From that day forward, Takeshi no longer rushed through life, grasping for answers or searching for meaning. He still traveled, still sought wisdom, but now he did so with a heart that was open, without the need to control or force the outcome. He allowed life to come to him as it would, trusting that everything he needed would be provided when the time was right. Years later, Takeshi would return to the Zen temple, where Master Haku was still teaching. He walked through the garden, now with a peaceful smile on his face, no longer a thirsty traveler, but someone who had learned the art of simply being. He approached Haku and, with deep gratitude, said, "Master, I have learned the greatest lesson of all. I stopped grasping, and in that letting go, I found everything I had been searching for. Peace was always here." Master Haku nodded, a knowing smile on his face. "Yes, Takeshi, the water is always in the well, waiting to quench your thirst. You need only stop grasping, and it will come to you." And so, Takeshi continued his journey, not as a seeker, but as someone who had learned to live with peace, knowing that life would always be there to quench his thirst, as long as he stopped grasping for it. Reiko had been a student at the Zen monastery for several years. She was diligent in her practice, spending hours each day meditating, studying the teachings of the Buddha, and performing her duties with care. Yet, despite her commitment, Reiko felt a sense of unrest that she could not shake. The world around her seemed chaotic, constantly filled with noise, distractions, and endless demands. No matter how hard she worked to find peace, the world outside seemed to pull her in every direction. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult day, Reiko approached Master Nori, a wise and patient monk who had been her teacher since she arrived at the temple. She had come to admire him for his deep understanding and calm presence. There was something about the way he moved through the world that seemed effortless, as if he were not affected by the turbulence of life. Reiko had often wondered how he remained so peaceful despite the challenges of the world. "Master," she began, her voice filled with the frustration she had been carrying for weeks, "how can I remain peaceful in this chaotic world? I try to meditate, I follow the teachings, but I cannot seem to quiet my mind. The world is so loud, so full of distractions. How do I find peace when everything around me is in constant turmoil?" Master Nori listened carefully, nodding in understanding. He did not answer right away, as he often took his time before speaking, allowing the right words to emerge naturally. After a moment, he rose from his seat and motioned for Reiko to follow him. They walked together toward the small pond that sat at the edge of the temple's garden. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light across the water, and the sounds of the day were starting to fade into the evening stillness. As they reached the edge of the pond, Master Nori pointed to a lotus flower that was blooming in the water. The flower was beautiful, its petals soft and delicate, standing out against the dark surface of the pond. Despite the water being murky, with bits of mud and leaves floating around it, the lotus stood tall and pure, untouched by the surrounding mess. "Reiko," Master Nori said, his voice calm and steady, "do you see this lotus flower? It grows in the muddy waters, yet it remains untouched by the mud. It does not struggle against the murkiness, nor does it try to escape the water. It simply blooms where it is, in the midst of the chaos." Reiko stared at the lotus, seeing how it seemed so peaceful and graceful, despite the conditions around it. She could not understand how it could remain so pure in such a muddy environment. "But Master," Reiko said, "the lotus grows in mud. How can it remain untouched? Doesn't the mud affect it? Doesn't it get dirty or trapped in the mess?" Master Nori smiled gently and looked at Reiko with understanding. "The lotus does not resist the mud, Reiko. It does not try to escape it or fight against it. It grows in the mud, but it does not let the mud define it. The mud is simply the environment in which the lotus grows. It does not allow the chaos of the water to affect its beauty. It blooms naturally, without struggle. Reiko's mind was racing as she tried to understand the deeper meaning of what Master Nori was saying. So, you are saying that I should not try to escape the chaos of the world? I should not try to fight against it? Master Nori nodded. Exactly. The world is full of noise, distractions, and struggles. You cannot control what happens around you, just as the lotus cannot control the mud in the water. But you can choose how to respond. The key is to let go of your attachment to outcomes. When you stop trying to change the world, to make it something other than what it is, you will find peace. Reiko stood in silence, watching the lotus bloom in the murky water. The idea was difficult to grasp, but something about it resonated deeply with her. For so long, she had been fighting against the chaos of the world. She had been trying to find peace by changing everything around her, by making everything perfect. But now she realized that the world would never be perfect, and that peace could not come from controlling external circumstances. The lotus does not fight the mud, Master Nori continued. It simply grows where it is, without attachment to the conditions around it. It blooms because it is true to its nature. In the same way, you must be true to your own nature. Do not try to escape the world or change it. Simply let go of your attachment to how you think things should be, and you will find that peace flows naturally. Reiko felt a sense of clarity begin to wash over her. She had been trying so hard to find peace by changing her circumstances, by making everything in her life perfect. She thought that if she could just make the world calm, she would feel at ease. But now she understood that peace was not something that could be forced or controlled. It was something that came from within when she stopped trying to fight against the world. She looked at Master Nori, her eyes filled with a new understanding. "So, Master," she said softly, "I must stop struggling against the world. I must stop trying to control everything and simply be present, just like the lotus. Is that the key to peace?" Master Nori nodded, his face serene. "Yes, Reiko. The lotus teaches us that peace is not found in the absence of chaos, but in how we respond to it. When you let go of your attachment to outcomes, when you stop trying to control everything, you will find that life flows without struggle. The lotus grows in muddy water, but it remains untouched. In the same way, you can live in the world without being affected by its chaos." Reiko stood in quiet contemplation, feeling the weight of Master Nori's words settle in her heart. She had always believed that peace could only come when everything around her was calm, when there was no noise, no confusion, no chaos. But now she understood that peace was not dependent on external circumstances. It was something that could be found within, in the way she responded to the world. As they stood by the pond, the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon and the garden grew quiet. Reiko felt a deep sense of calm wash over her, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She realized that the peace she had been searching for was already within her, waiting for her to stop struggling and to simply allow it to emerge. "Thank you, Master," Reiko said, bowing deeply. "I see now that I do not need to fight against the world to find peace. I need only to let go and accept things as they are. The lotus blooms in the mud because it does not resist. I, too, can bloom in the world by letting go of my attachments." Master Nori smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "You have learned well, Reiko. Remember, life flows like the water in the pond. It will always be full of challenges, full of distractions. But when you stop struggling, when you let go of your need to control, you will find that peace flows naturally." Reiko left the garden that evening with a lighter heart, her mind clearer than it had been in years. She no longer felt the need to control the world or to fight against its chaos. Instead, she knew that peace could be found in the present moment Just as the lotus blooms in the muddy water, she would live her life with more acceptance, letting go of her attachment to outcomes and allowing life to flow as it would. In the days that followed, Reiko practiced the teachings of Master Nori. She still encountered challenges, still faced the chaos of the world, but she no longer felt overwhelmed by it. Instead, she faced each moment with calm, accepting whatever came her way without resistance. Like the lotus, she learned to grow in the midst of the mud, untouched by the chaos around her. And as Reiko continued her path, she found that peace was not something distant, something to be reached. It was something she could access right here, right now, simply by letting go of her attachment to outcomes and allowing herself to be present in the moment. In this way, the teachings of Master Nori became a guiding light in her life, showing her that peace flows without struggle when we stop grasping and simply allow life to unfold as it is. Master Shiro, a Zen master with years of wisdom, was known for his deep understanding of life and nature. His presence was calm, and his teachings were simple yet profound. Many students came from far and wide to learn from him, seeking answers to life's many questions. Among them was Yumi, a young student eager to learn but often struggling with impatience. She wanted to understand the deeper truths of life, to find peace in a world that often felt chaotic, but she was unsure how to quiet the noise in her heart. Yumi had been studying under Master Shiro for some time now. She admired his calmness, his ability to face each moment without haste, without struggle. But Yumi was different. She always felt like she had to do more, be more, reach further. Her mind was restless, always seeking the next answer, the next step, the next goal. In her efforts to become enlightened, she often found herself frustrated and confused. One morning, after a particularly restless night, Yumi followed Master Shiro as he walked toward the temple's bamboo grove. She had been feeling weighed down by her inner restlessness and longed to find the peace she so desperately sought. Master Shiro had always been gentle in his teachings, never pushing her too hard, but Yumi could sense that today he had something important to share with her. The bamboo grove was a quiet place, filled with tall, slender stalks that swayed gently in the breeze. The light filtered softly through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The air smelled fresh, and the sound of the bamboo swaying in the wind was soothing. Yumi followed Master Shiro into the grove and stood beside him, watching the bamboo as it bent and swayed with the wind. "Observe how the bamboo bends in the wind," Master Shiro said softly, his voice as calm as the breeze. He gestured to the bamboo around them, its slender stalks moving gracefully in the wind. Yumi watched closely, noticing how the bamboo never broke, no matter how strong the wind. It bent, it swayed, but it did not snap. The bamboo seemed to move effortlessly, like it was in perfect harmony with the wind. Yumi was quiet for a moment, taking in the sight. She looked up at Master Shiro, confusion in her eyes. "Master," she said slowly, "the bamboo does not resist the wind. It bends, but it does not fight. Why does it not resist? Is that not weakness?" Master Shiro smiled gently, his eyes filled with understanding. "No, Yumi," he said, "it is not weakness. The bamboo does not resist because it knows that resistance only brings suffering. It allows the wind to move it, and in doing so, it remains whole. If the bamboo resisted the wind, it would break. But by bending with the wind, it flows with life, not against it." Yumi looked at the bamboo again, watching it bend gracefully in the breeze. She had never thought about it that way. "So, you are saying that when life pushes us, we should bend instead of resisting?" Master Shiro nodded. "Yes, Yumi. Life will always bring wins, challenges, difficulties, and obstacles. But when you resist life's flow, when you try to fight against the winds, you only create more tension and suffering. Like the bamboo, when you stop resisting, you will bend with grace instead of breaking." You will move through life, not against it. Yumi stood still, absorbing the wisdom of her master's words. She thought about her own life, the constant striving, the constant effort to achieve, to overcome. She had always believed that strength meant pushing through, fighting against obstacles, and controlling everything around her. But now, standing in the bamboo grove, she began to understand that true strength came from letting go, from allowing herself to bend and flow with the world around her. "Master," Yumi said after a pause, "but what if I let go and life becomes too overwhelming? What if I bend too much and lose myself in the process?" Master Shiro looked at her with gentle eyes, his voice calm and reassuring. "Bending does not mean losing yourself, Yumi. It means accepting the natural flow of life. When you bend, you do not break. You adapt. You remain true to yourself, but you do not force your will against the wind. The bamboo does not fight the wind, but it remains rooted in the earth. You, too, can remain rooted in your true nature, while allowing life to move through you." Yumi thought about this deeply. She had always believed that in order to survive, she had to be rigid, unyielding. She had pushed against life's challenges, determined to make things go her way. But now, she began to see that maybe the way forward wasn't through resistance, but through acceptance. The bamboo did not need to fight to stay strong. It simply bent, allowing the wind to pass through without holding on to it. "I see now, Master," Yumi said, her voice quieter, more reflective. "I have been trying so hard to control everything, to make things happen the way I want them to. But I see that by resisting, I only create more struggle for myself. The bamboo shows me that true strength comes from letting go, from flowing with life, not against it." Master Shiro smiled, pleased with her understanding. "Yes, Yumi, the bamboo does not resist, but it does not give up its place either. It bends, but it does not break. It adapts, but it remains rooted. In the same way, you must be flexible in your approach to life, but remain grounded in your true nature. When you stop fighting, you will find that life flows effortlessly, and you will move with it, not against it." Yumi stood in the grove for a long time, watching the bamboo sway with the wind. She felt a deep sense of peace beginning to settle in her heart. The constant striving, the need to control it was all unnecessary. She no longer had to fight against life's challenges. She could bend with them, move with them, and still remain true to herself. From that day forward, Yumi began to live differently. She still worked hard, still pursued her goals, but she no longer fought against the flow of life. She let go of her attachment to specific outcomes and learned to bend with the winds of change. She found peace in accepting what was, rather than resisting what could be. Like the bamboo, she grew with grace, bending when life required it, but never breaking. In the years that followed, Yumi's life became a journey of flowing with the world around her. The challenges did not disappear, but her response to them changed. She no longer saw obstacles as enemies to be defeated, but as part of the natural rhythm of life. She learned to bend with the winds, knowing that they, too, would eventually pass. And with each passing wind, she grew stronger, more rooted in her true self, and more at peace with the world. Master Shiro's lesson, taught in the quiet bamboo grove, stayed with her throughout her life. When faced with difficulties, Yumi remembered the bamboo, standing tall and strong, bending with the wind but never breaking. And in that remembrance, she found the strength to bend with grace, not to fight against life's flow, but to move with it, trusting that, in the end, life would guide her exactly where she needed to be. The beauty of the bamboo grove, the wisdom of Master Shiro, and the lesson of the bending bamboo remained in Yumi's heart forever. A reminder that peace is found not in the resistance of life, but in the graceful acceptance of its flow. Katsu was a young student at a Zen monastery. He was full of energy and eager to find inner peace, which he believed could be attained quickly if he just followed the right path. Every day, he studied diligently, practiced meditation, and listened to the teachings of his master, Koji. Despite his hard work and dedication, Katsu often felt restless. His mind was constantly busy, filled with thoughts and questions about enlightenment. The peace he longed for seemed distant, always just out of reach, no matter how much effort he put in. One afternoon, Katsu approached Master Koji with a question that had been troubling him for some time. "Master, I want to gain wisdom and enlightenment," Katsu said, his voice filled with eagerness. "I have been practicing diligently, but I still feel restless. I want to know what is the quickest way to reach inner peace." Master Koji looked at Katsu with his usual calm, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. He did not respond right away, but motioned for Katsu to follow him. Without saying a word, Koji led Katsu to a pond near the edge of the temple grounds. The pond was peaceful, surrounded by trees and quiet grass, the water still and calm under the soft light of the afternoon Sunday. Koji walked to the edge of the pond and picked up a small stone from the ground. He turned to Katsu and said, "Throw this stone into the pond." Katsu took the stone from Koji's hand and, without hesitation, tossed it into the water. As the stone sank into the pond, ripples spread out in all directions. Katsu watched as the ripples moved across the water, distorting the once perfect surface. For a moment, the pond was no longer still but full of movement. Koji stood quietly, watching the water. After some time, he turned to Katsu and asked, "What do you see?" Katsu looked at the pond, his mind still focused on the ripples. "I see ripples," he said. Koji nodded slowly. "Now," he said, "wait and watch until the pond becomes still again." Katsu stood in silence, watching the water, waiting for the ripples to settle. At first, the ripples were large, moving across the surface of the pond, but gradually they became smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. Slowly, the water became still again, perfectly smooth, like a mirror reflecting the sky above. After a while, Katsu spoke. "The pond is still now," he said, observing the peaceful surface. Koji turned to Katsu and smiled gently. "Peace is like the stillness of the pond," he said. "It is only found when the mind ceases to chase." The ripples in the pond were created by the stone. The mind, too, is often like the water when it is disturbed by thoughts, desires, and worries. When the mind is restless, it cannot find peace. But when you let go of your thoughts, when you stop chasing after them, you will find that peace, like the stillness of the pond, comes naturally. Katsu stood there for a long time, reflecting on the master's words. He thought about the ripples in the pond, how they were caused by the stone, and how they had slowly disappeared when the disturbance was no longer there. He realized that his mind was often like the pond before the ripples had settled, full of thoughts, desires, and worries that never seemed to stop. He had been chasing after peace, thinking that if he worked hard enough, if he tried enough, he would find it. But now, standing beside the pond, he understood that peace was not something to chase. It was something to allow. "Master," Katsu said quietly, "I have been chasing peace, striving to find it by force. I've tried so hard to make my mind still, but it only seems to grow more restless. How do I stop the ripples of my thoughts and find peace like the stillness of the pond?" Koji looked at Katsu with kindness in his eyes. "The more you try to stop the ripples, the more you create them," he said. "The key is to stop chasing the ripples. When you stop grasping for peace, when you stop trying to control your thoughts, you will find that peace comes naturally, just as the stillness of the pond comes when the ripples fade away." Katsu listened carefully, trying to understand. He had spent so much time trying to control his thoughts, to make them stop, believing that if he could stop his thoughts, he would finally find peace. But now, he saw that peace did not come from controlling or forcing his mind to be still. It came from letting go, from allowing his thoughts to settle on their own, just like the ripples in the pond. Koji spoke again, his voice calm and steady. Imagine your thoughts as ripples in the pond. When you chase them, they only grow. But when you stop chasing, when you let go of your attachment to them, they will naturally fade, and the pond will return to stillness. The mind, too, will return to stillness when you stop chasing your thoughts. Katsu stood silently, contemplating the master's words. He realized that the more he fought against his thoughts, the more they seemed to dominate his mind. He had been trying to control his thoughts, to make them stop, thinking that peace would come when he could quiet his mind. But now he understood that peace was not about control. It was about letting go, allowing his thoughts to come and go, without attachment, without grasping. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the still pond, Katsu felt a sense of peace he had not felt before. He had been chasing after peace for so long. But now, standing by the pond, he realized that peace had always been within him. It was like the stillness of the pond, always there, waiting for him to stop chasing after it. "Master," Katsu said after a long silence, "I understand now. I have been trying to control my thoughts, to make my mind still. But peace is not something I can force, it is something I must allow. Just like the ripples in the pond, my thoughts will fade when I stop chasing them." Koji smiled gently and nodded. "Yes, Katsu. Peace is always here, within you, just as the stillness is always present in the pond. It is only when you stop chasing after it, when you let go of your attachment to thoughts and desires, that you will experience the peace that is already there." From that moment on, Katsu began to live his life with a new understanding. He still practiced meditation and studied the teachings, but he no longer tried to force peace into his life. Instead, he allowed it to arise naturally by letting go of his attachment to thoughts and expectations. When his mind became restless, he simply let the thoughts come and go, like ripples in the pond, without grasping or chasing them. And in that letting go, he found the peace he had been searching for. As the days passed, Katsu's life became more peaceful. He no longer fought with his thoughts or struggled to quiet his mind. Instead, he trusted that peace would come when he stopped trying to control it. Just like the still pond, his mind became more calm and clear, free from the turbulence of constant striving. One day, after many years, Katsu returned to the pond where he had first learned this lesson from Master Koji. The pond was still, just as it had been when he first arrived. The ripples of his thoughts had long since faded, and he stood by the water, feeling a deep sense of peace. Master Koji, now older, sat beside him. "How does it feel, Katsu?" he asked. Katsu smiled and looked at the calm waters of the pond. "It feels like stillness," he said. "It feels like peace. I no longer chase after it. I no longer fight against my thoughts. I simply let them come and go, and in that letting go, I find the peace that was always there." Koji nodded, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Yes, Katsu, peace is always here, within you. It is like the stillness of the pond, waiting for you to stop chasing, to stop striving, and to simply be. You have learned well." And so, Katsu continued his journey, no longer a seeker of peace, but someone who had learned to live in peace, knowing that it was always within him, always present, like the still pond, waiting to be discovered when he stopped chasing after it. Zen Master Kaito was a quiet man, a master of simplicity and presence. His teachings were never long-winded or complex. He would often speak in parables or stories, leaving his students to draw their own conclusions. It was not that Kaito didn't have much to say, but he believed that true wisdom was found in experience, in seeing the world as it truly was, rather than through the lens of intellect alone. One day, Akira, a young and eager student, approached Master Kaito with a question. Akira had been meditating for many years, following the teachings closely, but he still felt restless. Despite his efforts, he couldn't shake the sense that something was missing. The path to enlightenment seemed distant, and the more Akira tried to grasp it, the more elusive it became. "Master," Akira began, "I have been searching for peace, but it always seems to be just out of my reach. I meditate, I study, I work hard every day, but I cannot find the peace I long for. What am I doing wrong?" Master Kaito, as he often did not respond immediately. Instead, he led Akira to a quiet pond near the temple. The air was still, and the pond mirrored the clear blue sky above. The surface of the water was like glass, undisturbed, a perfect reflection of the world around it. Kaito sat down by the edge of the pond, and Akira, following his lead, sat beside him. After a few moments of silence, Kaito spoke. "Akira," he said, "let me tell you a story. There was once a man who walked by a pond on a clear night. The moon was full, and it shone brightly in the sky, casting a beautiful reflection on the surface of the water. The man, seeing the moon's reflection, was fascinated by its beauty. But he thought that if he could only touch the moon, he would understand it completely. So he reached down into the water, trying to scoop the moon up with his hands." Akira listened intently, his eyes fixed on the still water of the pond, waiting for the story to unfold. But no matter how hard the man tried, Kaito continued, the moon slipped away each time he reached for it. He stretched his arms further, he bent lower, but the moon remained just out of reach, always slipping away when he tried to grasp it. His efforts were in vain. The man could not touch the moon, because the moon was already there, reflected in the water. It was not something to be grasped or held. Akira was silent, thinking deeply about the story. Kaito looked at him, waiting for a response. "So, Master," Akira said slowly, "the man was chasing the moon, but it was already reflected in the water. His effort to grasp it was in vain because what he sought was already there, right in front of him." Kaito smiled, his eyes kind. "Yes, Akira, the moon in the water was already present. The man was chasing something that could not be caught by effort, because it was not separate from the world around him. It was already reflected in the water, already there. He did not need to reach for it." Akira sat quietly, absorbing the lesson. It seemed simple, yet profound. "But Master," he said after a moment, "I feel as if I am chasing enlightenment in the same way. I work hard, I meditate, I study, but I cannot seem to grasp it. It's always just beyond my reach, like the moon in the water. What am I supposed to do?" Master Kaito turned his gaze to the pond, watching the gentle ripples on the surface of the water. The moon's reflection wavered, yet it remained. Enlightenment, peace. Understanding these things are like the moon in the water. They are already here. The more you try to grasp them, the more they slip away. You cannot force enlightenment. You cannot chase it or control it. The more you try to hold on to it, the further it moves from you. Akira felt a sense of unease. He had spent so many years chasing after peace, trying to control his thoughts, trying to force himself into a state of stillness. Yet peace still eluded him. "So, Master," he asked, "if I cannot chase after peace, how do I find it?" Kaito smiled again, his face gentle and calm. "You find peace, Akira, by allowing it to come to you. Just as the moon reflects in the water without being grasped, peace is reflected in your life when you stop trying to control it, when you stop trying to reach for it. When you let go of the need to make it happen, it will naturally appear. It is always here, within you and around you. You only need to stop grasping and let it be." Akira was silent, It was as if something had shifted inside him. He had been searching for peace through effort, through control, through striving. He thought that if he worked hard enough, peace would come to him. But now, he understood that peace was not something to be achieved through effort. It was already here, already reflected in the world around him, waiting for him to stop reaching for it. "Master," Akira said softly, "I understand now. I have been trying too hard to grasp peace, to control it. But it is already here, within me and all around me. I only need to stop chasing it and let it come." Kaito nodded, his eyes filled with kindness. "Yes, Akira, peace comes when we stop chasing. The more we strive to grasp it, the more we distance ourselves from it. When we allow it to flow naturally, when we stop trying to control everything, we find that peace is already here. Just like the moon in the water, it is present, reflected in everything we do." Akira felt a deep sense of relief, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time, he realized that peace was not something to be attained, but something to be recognized. It was always there, waiting for him to stop chasing after it. For the next few days, Akira practiced the teachings of Master Kaito. He still meditated, still studied, but now he did so with a different attitude. He no longer tried to force peace into his life. Instead, he allowed it to come to him naturally, without attachment to the outcome. When his mind became restless, he simply let the thoughts pass, like ripples in the water, without trying to control them. He allowed the moment to be as it was, without striving for something more. As the days went on, Akira began to notice a shift in himself. His mind became quieter, his heart lighter. He no longer felt the need to chase after peace because he understood that peace was already within him, waiting to be recognized. The more he let go, the more peace he felt in his life. One evening, as the sun began to set, Akira walked to the pond where he had first heard Master Kaito's story. The moon was rising, and its reflection shone brightly in the water. The ripples from the wind had faded, and the pond was calm, the moon's reflection perfect and still. Akira stood by the water, gazing at the moon, and for the first time, he felt completely at peace. Master Kaito appeared beside him, standing quietly as they both looked at the moon in the water. "You see, Akira," Kaito said, "the moon was always here. It was reflected in the water from the beginning. It was never something you had to chase. You only needed to stop trying to grasp it and let it be." Akira smiled, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Master. I understand now. Peace is not something to chase. It is something to allow. It is already here." From that moment on, Akira's life changed. He no longer searched for peace through effort or control. He simply allowed it to flow into his life, like the moon reflected in the water. And in that letting go, he discovered that peace was not something distant, but something he could recognize and embrace in each moment. Taro was a simple farmer who lived at the edge of a small village, surrounded by fields of crops that he tended to every day. His life was quiet, free from the noise and chaos of the world beyond his land. Each morning, he woke with the sun, and each evening, he rested as the moon rose in the sky. The seasons passed, bringing with them their own rhythms, and Taro moved through them with ease. He planted in the spring, harvested in the summer, and prepared for the cold of winter in the fall. Through it all, Taro found a deep sense of peace. He lived simply, without concern for things he could not control, accepting the ebb and flow of life with gratitude. One day, a monk from a distant temple arrived at Taro's farm, looking worn and tired. The monk had been traveling for many days, seeking wisdom from those he believed might offer him a glimpse into the deeper truths of life. He had heard of Taro's peaceful nature and wanted to understand how a simple farmer like him could live in such a way. The monk approached Taro while he was working in his field. He stood there quietly for a moment, watching Taro as he moved through the task at hand, bending down to pick up the weeds from his crops. Taro worked steadily, his hands moving with familiarity, his face calm and content. The monk, feeling exhausted from his long journey, finally spoke. "Taro," the monk said, his voice soft but filled with curiosity, "I have traveled far and met many wise people, but none seem to live with the peace you have. How can you be so peaceful? How do you live so simply and still find joy in your life, despite the difficulties that come with it?" Taro looked up from his work, his face gentle and kind. He had always lived simply, never seeking more than what he needed, never longing for things outside of his grasp. He didn't see himself as particularly wise or special, he just lived the way he had always lived, following the rhythms of nature, accepting what came with each passing day. The monk, still standing, awaited an answer. His eyes were searching, hoping to hear some great teaching that would help him find the peace he sought. Taro smiled softly and motioned for the monk to sit beside him on the ground. "Peace comes not from chasing after something," Taro said quietly, "but from living with what comes. I do not chase the harvest or the rain. I do not push against the seasons or try to force things to be as I want them. I simply live with what comes, and in that simplicity, I find peace." The monk sat down beside Taro, absorbing his words. Taro's life was so different from the monk's. The monk had been taught to seek enlightenment, to strive for wisdom, to look for answers outside of himself. Yet here was Taro, a humble farmer, who seemed to have found peace simply by accepting life as it was. "I do not chase the harvest," Taro continued, "because the harvest will come when it is time. I plant the seeds and tend to the crops, but I do not try to force them to grow faster. The same is true with the rain. I cannot control the weather, so I do not waste my energy worrying about it. When the rain comes, I welcome it, and when it does not, I make do with what I have." The monk looked at Taro with a mix of awe and confusion. "But what if the harvest is poor?" he asked. "What if the rain does not come? What if life does not go as you expect?" Taro paused for a moment, considering the question. "In life, there are many things we cannot control. The harvest, the rain, the seasons, they all come and go as they will. If I worry about what might happen, I will miss the beauty of the present moment. I trust that whatever happens, I will be able to handle it. I will adapt, just as the earth adapts to each season." The monk nodded slowly, still unsure. He had always been taught that one should strive for a better life, that one should reach for enlightenment with all their might. But Taro's approach seemed so simple, so effortless. It was as if Taro was at peace simply because he had stopped trying to force things to be different than they were. Taro smiled, sensing the monk's confusion. "I live with what comes, not against it. I do not fight the seasons. I do not resist what is. When you stop fighting life, you allow it to flow naturally. It is like the river. The river does not try to force the rocks aside. It flows around them, adjusting itself to the shape of the land. In the same way, when you stop resisting life's flow, you will find peace." The monk sat in silence, thinking about what Taro had said. The idea of not fighting against life, of accepting things as they were, seemed so foreign to him. He had spent his whole life striving, pushing, reaching for something he could not define. He had always believed that peace would come when he reached a certain point, when he had gained enough knowledge or achieved enough wisdom. But now, sitting beside Taro, he realized that peace was not something to be gained through effort. It was something to be found in acceptance. "Master," the monk said after a long pause, "I understand now. You are not seeking anything, yet you have found everything. You are at peace because you have accepted life as it is, without trying to control it." Taro nodded gently. "Yes, my friend. When you accept life as it is, You free yourself from the burden of expectation. Life flows like the river, and you flow with it. You stop struggling, and in that stillness, peace is found. The monk, feeling lighter than he had in days, stood up slowly. He thanked Taro for his wisdom and, with a deep bow, promised to carry the lesson with him on his journey. As he left the farm, he felt a deep sense of peace begin to grow within him. He realized that his search for wisdom and peace had been filled with striving, with effort, with an endless desire for something he thought he had to reach. But now, he saw that peace was not something to be reached at all. It was already within him, waiting to be recognized when he stopped chasing it. As the monk walked away from Taro's farm, he looked back one last time at the simple farmer working in his field. Taro's life was not perfect, and he did not have wealth or fame, but he had something that many people, including the monk, had been searching for their entire lives: peace. And that peace came not from control, but from surrender to the flow of life, to the seasons, to what is. In the years that followed, the monk continued his journey, carrying Taro's lesson with him wherever he went. He learned to stop fighting against life, to stop struggling for things he could not control. Instead, he lived with what came, and in that simplicity, he found peace. And whenever people asked him how he had found such peace, he would smile and say, "I learned from a wise farmer that peace comes not from chasing, but from living with what is." Meanwhile, Taro continued his life as it always had been, planting seeds, harvesting crops, and living in harmony with the seasons. His life was simple, yet filled with contentment. He had learned long ago that peace was not something that could be forced. It was found in every season, in every moment, when one simply allowed life to unfold as it was meant to. Taro's wisdom came from living this truth each day, and in doing so, he found joy in every season, no matter what it brought. During a long retreat at a Zen monastery, Master Kenzu had a simple yet profound task for his students. He handed each one an empty bowl, instructing them to carry it with them at all times. The bowl was to be kept with them wherever they went during meals, during meditation, even as they walked through the monastery grounds. At first, the students did not fully understand the reason for this task. Why should they carry an empty bowl all the time? What was the purpose? It seemed like such a small and simple thing, yet it was clear that Master Kenzu was asking them to pay close attention to something. As the days passed, the students began to realize that the bowl was not just a physical object to be carried. It was a lesson, an exercise in mindfulness and attachment. They started to notice how they treated the bowl, how they were careful not to drop it, how they felt when they put it down, and how they instinctively protected it from harm. One morning, as the students were gathering for meditation, one of them, Taro, accidentally knocked his bowl from a small table. The bowl fell to the floor, and in an instant, it shattered into pieces. The sound of the bowl breaking echoed through the hall. Taro's eyes widened in shock, and he quickly knelt down to gather the pieces, his hands trembling. The other students, who had all been carrying their bowls carefully, now looked at the broken pieces of Taro's bowl. The atmosphere was heavy with a sense of loss, as if the very thing that had given them purpose had been taken away. Master Kenzu, who had been watching quietly, walked over to where the broken pieces lay. He looked down at the shards, then turned to the students with a calm expression. "Why are you upset?" he asked. His voice was gentle but firm. "Why do you mourn the bowl?" The students exchanged uncertain glances. Taro looked up at the master, his face filled with regret. "Master Kenzu," he said, "I'm sorry. The bowl was important. I've been carrying it with me, and now it's broken. I didn't mean for it to happen." Master Kenzu nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the room. "You see," he said, "it is your attachment to the bowl that causes you to mourn. The bowl was never yours to keep. It was never meant to last forever. When you attached yourself to it, you made it more than it was. And when it broke, you felt the pain of that attachment. But if you can let go of your attachment, you will see that life flows with ease. Things come and things go. But the flow of life continues. The students sat in silence, trying to understand what Master Kenzu was saying. It was difficult to comprehend. They had all been so careful with their bowls, so protective of them. The bowls had become part of their routine, part of their practice. And now, in an instant, the bowl had shattered and they felt the weight of that loss. But Master Kenzu's words began to sink in. He wasn't angry or disappointed. He was teaching them something deeper about attachment. You see, Kenzu continued, the bowl was never the source of your peace. It was simply a reminder. The real peace comes when you let go of your attachment to things. The bowl, just like everything else in life, was temporary. You could not keep it forever. But in letting go of it, you learn to live freely, without clinging to things that do not last. Taro, still kneeling by the broken pieces, nodded slowly. He felt a deep sense of release in the master's words. It was as though the weight he had been carrying in his heart was beginning to lift. The bowl, so important to him just moments before, no longer seemed like the source of his peace. The peace he had been seeking was not in the bowl, but in the freedom to accept things as they were. Master Kenzu reached down and picked up one of the shards of the broken bowl. He held it in his hand, examining it thoughtfully. Then he turned to the students. The bowl was useful for a time, but when it broke, it was no longer useful in the same way. Life is like this. Things come into our lives, serve a purpose, and then they pass away. It is not the things themselves that matter, but our ability to let go of them when the time comes. The more we cling to things, the more we create suffering for ourselves. But when we let go, we can move freely through life, without being weighed down. The students sat in silence, each one reflecting on their own attachments, the things in their lives that they held onto too tightly, the things they were afraid to lose. For some, it was their possessions. For others, it was their desires, their dreams, or their fears. But the lesson was clear. Attachment to anything, even something as simple as a bowl, could cause suffering. As the days passed, the students began to carry their bowls with a new understanding. They still used the bowls, but they no longer clung to them. They handled them gently, with care, but they knew that the bowls could be broken at any time. And in that knowledge, they found freedom. They began to see that life itself was like the bowl. It was not permanent, and it could change in an instant. But if they let go of their attachment to outcomes, to possessions, to expectations, they could experience life more fully. One evening, after the meditation session, the students gathered in the hall, each holding their bowl in their hands. They had all experienced the lesson of the broken bowl in different ways.